Hey guys, sorry, there was a bit of a technical fault. Internet got lost or whatever it was that happened. But we fixed it, and hopefully you're logged in, and hopefully you can see what we're doing. Okay, so I stopped cutting hair for you to see where I'm up to at the moment. Okay, I'm going to continue taking curved sections. Okay, and I'm going to be connecting the shape into my graduation behind the ear. So now I'm very slightly removing that corner behind the ear. And every section I'm elevating it. And now if you noticed, I've started to comb the hair from above rather than from the underneath, because I want to build out into a little bit of extra weight. Are we connected okay? Is everyone? Yeah. Can everyone see what we're doing?
We're all good.
Good.
We get someone to ask a question, John, see if they interact with us.
Guys, do me a favour. If you see anything that you want to ask me, please feel free to ask me, because that way we can know that it's going live and we haven't got any technical issues. But in the meantime, I'm going to discuss what I'm doing here. So every section now is slightly curved. I'm moving my body slightly. I'm combing the hair once and cutting it once. Good. Are we live, guys?
All good.
Yeah? John? Can you see it on your phone? Perfect, thank you, Woody. Maybe get Jonathan, get Woody's phone. Okay, good. Right.
So maybe if we can recap
what we've done so far.
Some people have kind of missed the first
Perfect.
10 minutes.
Okay, so let me start with what I've done so far, okay? Perfect. If you come here for me, Andy, let me show you what we've done. So we started off by taking a vertical section in the back. We cut a triangular cutting line, working from shorter externally to longer internally. Then we worked parallel sections. We worked 7 sections up to the top, either side, graduating the haircut so it was triangular vertically and also slightly triangular horizontally. I used the shoulders and the chair to control my over direction and the angle of my cutting line. I counted my sections to make sure I was symmetrical. Then I came round to my left hand side, and if I come round here, I cut the first 3 sections by taking diagonal sections, combing it to the natural fall, establishing my external shape. Then I continued working horizontal sections, slightly more, actually to be fair, slightly more curvaceous. So not quite horizontal, not quite diagonal, kind of like somewhere in between. And basically what I've done is I've worked slightly rounder and I've taken the corner off behind the ear. Okay? I'm going to continue doing that the whole way up until I work up to the parting. Now this is a really beautiful interpretation of something that you can do in the salon really easily tomorrow.
So Johnny, can I ask you, does the head shape make a difference in this particular haircut?
Big time. Head shape, the key to understanding head shape is that if you understand the head shape, you'll understand the choice of length. In other words, if the head shape has quite a lot of predominant areas or quite a lot of indentations, by understanding the choice of length, you can either hide, disguise, or expose the head shape. One of the biggest things people struggle with is choice of length. And my advice to you when it comes to that is don't get frustrated. At the end of the day, it's all part of the learning curve, and experience is the biggest thing that will help you understand choice of length. In this scenario, with Sophia's hair, Sophia's got quite a predominant mastoid process area, and which is here. This is the mastoid process bone. And in the centre back where the trapezius muscle is, it's quite indented. So the choice of length in that area is so important, which is why I left it a little bit longer in that area to control it. Because if I go too short, the whole shape collapses in and it doesn't look sexy at all. It's not attractive. So my last section, which is here on the, up to the parting, I'm going to comb the hair out and connect the shape through. All the way around. And my body is something that I would like to show you something. So as I'm working here, as I work around, I basically, with my body, I shift my weight on my knee. So I shift it. Rather than physically moving around, which you can do, okay? One way of doing it is to aim for the middle of your chest, bang, bang, like that. Or another way is to simply start here and shift your weight. Okay? Either one is fine. Me personally, I prefer shifting my weight on my knees, because that way I'm a lot more stationary and I can see the kind of, from a central point of view, I can see the side, like that. So I've cut one side of my haircut and I comb the hair down into position, unlock it, I use my mirror. You look at the mirror, you'll be able to see my shape. Perfect. So I'm able to see the placement of my weight and how clean the technique is. After, I'm going to put some beautiful outlines in and the whole haircut will come alive. Okay? Now on my heavier side, which is this side, my right side, I'm going to work with a similar technique, but this is my heavy side due to the parting. So what I need to do, if I want symmetry, is I need to remember what I did. So for those of you who are watching, I don't know if you remember the numbers of my section and at what point I started to elevate. I need to use some product first just to rehydrate the hair. So I'm going to use the Davines DD Mist. Again, my favourite cutting lotion, okay? I'm going to spray this through the hair. All you need is a couple of sprays. You can't overweigh the hair with this product. It's a great product to use. You can't weigh it down too much. Okay? Now, on the other side, section 1, section 2, and section 3 were all natural fall, cutting the hair just before the bend. So on this side, can you see, look at the bend in the hair? I need to cut this flick out. So I'm going to cut it to here. That way the bend is gone in the hair. Now, if I wanted the sides to be symmetrical, which I'm not really bothered about, I'm thinking more about the bend in the hair rather than the symmetry. But if I wanted it to be symmetrical, a little tip you can do is get your comb, rest your comb at the top, and measure with the teeth. Come on this side, and you could do exactly the same. Go from the top and measure the teeth. Yeah? And you can measure exactly the same. You're not guessing. By using your comb, you're not just guessing it could be, it might be. No, no, no. Fact. And when it comes to cutting hair, the most disciplined haircutters out there tend to work really mechanically, really systematically. They tend to count all their sections. They tend to measure everything, so the shape is very precise. So this is section 2. Again, natural fall with a round cutting line, aiming towards the cheekbone. And section 3. After section 3 is when I started to elevate the hair. Good. Beautiful little weight line there. Now I'm going to start to elevate the hair, but I want to maintain some length in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of working quite flat, I'm going to slightly angle my fingers to maintain an extra bit of length in the front. And I'm going to work on the base initially, just to flatten the shape through behind the ear, and then I'm going to elevate so it becomes softer and more fluid as a shape. Because this side is naturally heavier because of the parting, I can afford to elevate the hair a little bit more and flatten it through a little bit. So I'm going to use section 2 and section 3 as a guide. I'm going to lift the hair up on my fingers. And I'm going to graduate it through. And you can see behind the ear now, look, there's the point of my graduation before. So I'm going to connect the two together. And just dust off that corner. So this is section 5.
We've got a question, John.
Okay. Who's the question from, John?
So a question from Danny Van T. Hey guys.
Hey Dan.
Do you advise or convince clients to change length according to what would fit best to the facial shape and time a client wants to spend on styling?
It's a very good question.
In brackets, I think still a lot about stylists find difficult to really convince a client.
It's a very good point. Very good point. And I'm going to be honest with you. One of the biggest things you've got to think about, this is the advice I'd give to anybody, whether you're doing show work, whether you're doing stage work, whether you're doing teaching in classes, or whether you're dealing with consumers. If you're just honest and you tell the truth and you believe in what you're saying, you're not just saying it because you have to say it, you're giving honest advice. People believe that, people understand that, people will change their mind, they'll follow you. Whereas if I just tell my client, for example, oh, we've got to do this won't work, this will work. Why? Why will it work? What's the right decision? Why am I suggesting this? And if you're really honest, customers feel that and they'll do whatever you want. I mean, one of the things that I would say to you is, when you're dealing with a customer for the first time, if, for example, you know as a professional, something won't work, suggest other things. But if they are so stubborn, so kind of set in their ways, so convinced that they know what they're talking about, then you have a decision to make. The decision is quite a simple one. It's, do you choose to say, do you know what, actually, maybe I'm the wrong person for you. I'm not willing to put my name against this particular shape because I feel like when you leave with piece of my work and my reputation, and I don't want my reputation to be tarnished. Or do you make the person happy the first time, build a relationship, build some trust, and then the second time and the third time, you then slowly help them convert the way they see their hair. Me personally, unless it's absolutely hideous, unless like what they're suggesting is just completely off the wall and won't look good at all in any way, shape or form, I would very, very rarely say, you know, I'm sorry, but I won't do that for you. You have to go to see someone else, because I think that's quite arrogant. I would try to make them happy. I would try to build a relationship with them and then slowly convert them. So that would be my advice. That being said, there has been customers who I've told them that I wouldn't do their hair, but that's because what they wanted was just completely not right, and there is an element of brand reputation that you have to protect. So now I'm connecting it into the back, so I'm creating a fluid graduated shape.
So George, we've got George, another question from his side.
Hey George.
George is saying, hi, I'm George from Cyprus, from Greece, no, from Greece, sorry George.
Hey George from Greece.
For what reason you don't use clips?
Good question.
How can you find the balance between the two sides?
Good. Okay, so basically, when you're cutting hair, if you're working with damp hair, and you're working clean sections like this, you don't have to use clips, okay? Because you're working in a way, in a manner where the hair, if I just get here, Andy, if I dampen the hair down a bit more, like this, and I comb the hair. Now look here, come here. See this bit here? If I leave that bit standing up, no matter how many times I comb it there, this will push across that way, so I will always lose. It will always push down on me. So before you focus here, get this bit right. So all this hair here, get that all moving in the direction that you want the hair to move, like that. And now, when I come back around this way, like this, the hair will stay away. You don't need to use clips, George. If you're disciplined and you work clean, you don't necessarily need to use clips. In regards to controlling the balance, which was the question that you asked before, it's all about understanding and remembering the elevation that you were using last time. So at what section did I start to elevate my haircut? Was it section 3? Was it section 4? Was it section 5? So I know I started elevating at section 3. And from section 3, I kept elevating till I got to where the parting was, and then I started combing from above. Now in this scenario, on this particular haircut, because this side is heavier, I could afford to lift a few more sections.
So Johnny, I've got another question then.
Okay, perfect. I love questions.
A lady called Emily Pisano.
Hey Emily, where's Emily from?
I'm sorry if I don't see or speak your names properly or pronounce them properly.
Jonathan's from Lincoln.
He said, why are you taking horizontal sections versus vertical?
Good question. Is that from Emma?
That's from Emily.
Good, Emily, good. Okay, Emily, so sections don't create shape, okay? Sections are there to help you work methodically through your shape, and they allow you, or they help you, or give you greater control over specific shapes. So for example, if you want to have a greater control over your horizontal shape, which is what I'm trying to do a lot more, you would take horizontal sections. If you want to have a greater control over your vertical shape, you will take vertical sections. If you want to have an even control over both shapes, you would take a diagonal section. Now in this scenario, I'm working horizontal sections because I really want to control the fluidity of my horizontal shape. If I was to take vertical sections, I'd be more focused on the vertical shape and less on the horizontal shape. In fact, we have a way of demonstrating that, which Jonathan came up with a great way of illustrating it for people. And what I'll do when I'm blow drying is I'll get Jonathan to talk you through that process, and I'll also get him to draw down what it was that we do, what it is we use to illustrate that to people. So basically, the more vertical your section is, the more you tend to affect your vertical shape. The more horizontal your section is, the more you affect your horizontal shape.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. So, Debbie G's in the house.
Debbie G, one of my favourite ever hairdressers, and somebody that I modelled an element of or what I tried to model, sorry, let me change that. For me, Debbie G is one of the best educators on the planet. She's one of the best mentors you'll ever meet or ever work with. And the reason for that is because she genuinely cares about people.
She wrote, fantastic Johnny, love your amazing education. That's what she wrote.
I love Debbie. Debbie was a massive influence on me personally when it came to how to talk to people and how to treat people. Really good woman.
Another question. It's from. Hang on 1 second. It is from Alex Collins. Is that a Sessibon comb?
Yes, this is a Sessibon comb. Yes. I must admit, it's one of my favourite ever combs. before I carry on talking about the comb, and let me just bring your attention back to something. Now, if I continue to work this way, around this way, horizontally, what I'm going to find is my crown will not connect in properly. So what I'm going to do, I've stopped here. I'm now going to come across the crown this way, and I'm going to connect the shape over the crown. Again, make sure you're working super clean. There's no excuse for working messy, apart from just pure laziness. And that's something that's we're quite passionate about trying to eradicate from people's work. It's the first thing we tend to focus on. So I'm working across the crown, and I'm connecting the shape through. And every time, I'm grooming the excess hair. Every time.
So another question, John, if you like.
Yes, please.
What difference would there be between the vertical and horizontal shapes?
Who's that from?
This is from Anel.
Anel? Do you know where Anel's from?
She hasn't wrote.
Okay. Anel, first of all, thank you for the question. So, basically, when you cut hair, you're in control of three shapes. Your vertical shape, your horizontal shape, and your triangular shape. Now, your triangular shape, in effect, is a combination of the vertical and the horizontal. Your horizontal is a combination of your vertical and diagonal. And your vertical is a combination of your horizontal and your diagonal. Now, that sounds very complicated, but the easiest way to explain it is this. It's a lot easier to control your shapes taking vertical sections and horizontal sections, because the closer your sections are, like we said before, to vertical, the less control you're having over your horizontal shape, and vice versa. Whereas when you're taking diagonal sections, because you're working across the head, it's a lot more complicated to control your elevation of an erection. So, the question was, when do you have a control over the vertical shape? When do you have control of it?
No, what difference
would it be? Okay,
so vertical and horizontal shapes. Maybe I think she means in your shape at the moment.
Okay, so in my shape at the moment, my horizontal shape is round, and my vertical shape is triangular. Okay? And the way you can see that, very obviously, is that I'm working shorter externally to longer internally with my graduation. And my horizontal shape is round because obviously I'm shifting my weight in my knees as well as moving around the head. Now you can see now I'm elevating quite high. Now, I know from a very large part of my career, and a lot of people share this knowledge, but I don't, if I'm honest, I don't actually agree with it, and I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. A lot of people talk about the fact that anything below 90 degrees is graduation, anything above 90 degrees is elevation. We don't believe that's correct, and I'll explain to you why. I could still be graduating the hair and lifting the hair up here, above 90 degrees. And the key to understanding that is not necessarily this point here, it's what's happening underneath it. If all the hair underneath it is still getting shorter, so it's shorter externally to longer internally, I'm still graduating the hair, even though I'm pulling it up here. Whereas a lot of people think, oh, if I'm pulling the hair here, I must be layering. That's not the case, okay? It all depends on what's happening underneath that point.
And just to jump in, John, we've got Renelle.
Hey, Renelle.
And basically, there was a little language mistake. Just, I don't want to point it out. Johnny used the words triangular shape, which he meant to. I think you meant to use the word diagonal shape when you said the three shapes, because we've just got a bit of confusion online. So basically, Johnny's talking about three shapes that we're in control of. One being vertical, two being horizontal, and the third one being diagonal. He just mispronounced it and said triangle, just by mistake. So I'm not trying to jump in and.
No, it's good. It's good. You're good.
Just trying to clarify a bit of confusion. So Renelle put, Johnny, please explain the triangular shape you mentioned. So I think that's just clarified that up.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
Let's have a look what else we've got. We did have, let's have a look here, we had Jordana Cabela. Hi from Jordana Cabela. Me and the Fame team in 2017. Love your work, thanks for the inspiration.
Oh, bless her.
Let's have a look.
Thank you, that's very sweet. Now you can see now, guys, as I'm working through the top, in this scenario, I am layering it because I'm rounding this corner off. I'm not building into the corner, okay? And the reason for that is because I want the hair to wrap and I want the hair to move, okay? Really important. And I'm working all the way back into the crown. And every section, when you're working your section, you should be able to see, if you come close, and you should be able to see both sides of your section. So the skin on this side and the skin on this side. If you can't see both sides of your sections, then you're working wrong, you're not working clean enough, okay? And I don't know if you noticed, but can you see what I've done with Sophia's head? I've tilted the head. By tilting the head, I'm actually working on top of the head, whereas if her head is upright, I have to then lean, which puts me off balance. Yeah, my legs, my feet are off the ground, I have to elevate and lean. Whereas if I tilt the head, I'm still standing in the same position. So don't be scared to manoeuvre the head and manipulate the head to get what you need.
We've got Eduardo Franco saying nice work from Salvador.
Thank you, Eduardo. Welcome.
We've got Kelly, she's saying great live, thanks so much, all the way from New Zealand. What time must it be in New Zealand at the minute?
Sure.
It's early morning.
Early morning.
Hope you're not in bed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Get to the beach.
Love the cut, Johnny, and see you soon. Miss you guys. This is Alexandro. Alexandro, I mean, you're going to be better pronouncing the surname than I am. Any tips for elbow position, control to keep the balance on both sides?
Good question. Okay, so my sectioning pattern, in fact, Andy, if you don't mind, what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to quickly draw this haircut, okay? So, I'm going to, before I start drawing it, I'm going to position the hair into shape like this, okay? Comb it through, position it into position, and then I'll come back and dry it off. But before I do that, I just want to do one thing. So, if I turn the chair around like this, okay? Responding. Okay, now what I want to try to do, I could leave the hairline quite natural, okay, which could be quite pretty, but I can make it slightly more modern. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to visually just cut a beautiful curved line that drops behind the ear, like that. Okay. And now, a good way of controlling the balance, if you look in the mirror, a good way of controlling the balance, so that's obviously what I've just cut on the side, okay? Now, a good way of controlling the balance is to do this. Let me show you this. If you come right around. This is a good tip called dot to dot, okay? It's what we call dot to dot. So if you want symmetry in your outline, this is the best way to do it. What you do is you get your finger, you place it in a position, you make sure your finger's the same balance, and you do a little nip. Then, you move your finger to the edge, and the finger to the edge, make sure your fingers are balanced, and you put a little nip. And now what you've done, is you've taken a really wide zone, and you've given 2 key points to aim towards. These 2 points here. So that then you basically connect the dots, okay? So if I straighten the head now, look at my body, I'm centralizing my body, I'm bending my knees rather than my back, and I'm basically going to work, and I'm going to connect the dots. And that way, I've got symmetry. Okay? And what I'm going to do, once the hair is blow dried, what I'll do is I'll check my symmetry, because based on where the hair moves here.
So Gene, yes, Johnny is using a cutting lotion. He is using the DD hair mist from Davines. I think he's used about half a bottle. That was brand new, I think.
That's correct.
Obviously, if we had a hello from New Zealand, we've got to have a hello from Sydney, Australia. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Janus Kiss, hello from Sydney, Australia. Now I've got a question for you, John.
Before we ask a question,
yeah.
I'm just going to show you what I'm doing now. I'm going to use the blow dry spray, it's a primer. It's my hair assistant, or your hair assistant, sorry. This was designed by Angela Seminara, supported by Davines. Okay, it's an amazing blow dry lotion. It gives a little bit of an extra bounce as well. So what you do is literally just put a little bit of the root. You don't need to use loads. And because it's water-based, it doesn't get too heavy, okay? So I'm only using it on this side because this is the side where I want a bit of bounce to it. And I'm also going to use a little bit of this, volume mousse. Now again, when you apply the product, apply it into your hands. And with the brush, yeah, get your product and brush it through the hair with the brush. That way you don't overpower and place too much product in one bit, and you don't gunk the hair down.
So you ready to answer a controversial question?
I'm all yours.
Okay, so John Santos, please.
Hey John. Where's John from?
I'm not 100%, it doesn't say.
Okay.
So he put, I thought that working on the horizontal was to build weight in the shape, and that working with the vertical was to reduce weight in the shape. And
yeah.
Finally working in the diagonal, either back or forward to direct the weight of the shape.
Either backwards
Thanks,
or
John
forwards.
Santos, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Okay, very good. So, without going into too much detail, ideally what you want to try to do, if you really want to understand the Allilon philosophy, how we teach hair, is to try and come and do a primary shapes with us, because we'll be able to go into a lot more detail about how to think about shapes slightly differently.
Contact Johan, one of our educators in Brazil, because if he's from Rio de Janeiro, he can contact Johan at Allilon Education in Sao Paulo. He actually lives there, so
yeah,
if he can't get to London, then he'll be able to get to Brazil, won't he?
Good point. So basically, this is how I would answer that question very simply. You can build weight by taking vertical sections, by taking horizontal sections, or by taking diagonal sections. You can flatten weight by taking horizontal sections, by taking vertical sections, or by taking diagonal sections. The sections are irrelevant. What matters is your elevation, your over direction, your cutting line. If you're taking horizontal sections, if you want to flatten the shape, just elevate more. If you want to take vertical sections and flatten, you could do that by changing the angle of the cutting line. If you want to take a diagonal section and flatten the shape, you can elevate more or change the angle of the cutting line. My advice to you is don't focus on sections and don't focus on the words graduation, graduation, layering and line, because all these things are actually results of true technique, which is basically your cutting line, your elevation, your over direction. Your cutting line, your elevation and your over direction are what creates shape. They're the things that create the shape. The result of these things are a shape which looks graduated or heavier, and a shape which looks flatter or layered. To go into a lot of detail, my advice would be come and spend a couple of days with us, or a couple of days with our educators, and we'll go through it in really fine detail and really kind of try and show you how much knowledge can evolve and how much you can think slightly differently. So I've prepped the hair. I'm going to talk obviously a little bit louder now. I will be drawing this haircut, but I'm just going to start by blow drying the hair into position. Now I want the haircut to go away from the face, so I'm going to focus on the hairline first, and I'm going to wrap the hair back fact, what I'll do, if I talk to you a little bit about wrap drying, it's something that I know drying hair or wrap drying hair isn't the most exciting thing on the world, but obviously doing a really strong and good blow dry is very, very important to a haircut being able to be checked. In fact, if I'm honest, and this is going to sound quite a little bit controversial, but this tool is an amazing tool, but the negative to it is it's developing a generation of hairdressers who don't know how to blow dry properly because they rely too much on the iron and the manipulation of the iron. A beautiful blow dry, if it's cut right, you shouldn't have to blow dry it. The haircut should support itself, it should build itself, it should collapse itself because you've chosen the right lengths that allow the shape to work. But blow drying is such a key point to being able to check your shape. So I'm focused at the moment on all these little baby hairs, okay? Really stretch the hair out, okay? Really brush the hair around like this. And as the hair dries, position it into shape so you can see the shape moulding. Now, if I talk to you about wrap drying, I'm going to try and give you guys an understanding that maybe you might not have heard before. So, hairdressers are very visual people. They're very visual people. So, if you tell hairdressers stories, it tends to sit in our minds much easier. So, the principles of wrap drying, okay? We all know that it's not the heat that sets the hair, it's the cooling down process. So the way we should think about it is a little bit like this. Imagine an ice sculptor, okay? And the ice sculptor's got a big block of ice. And what he does is he pulls the ice out into the heat of the room, and he basically uses his tools and he chips away at this big block of ice. And he moulds this piece of ice into the shape in which he wants. Then what he does, when he has the shape that he wants, he puts the block of ice back in the freezer to set. Imagine when you're blow drying, what you're doing in effect is you're taking the hair from something called alpha keratin. So alpha keratin is the state of the hair when it's in its natural position. So if you wash the hair and leave it alone, the hair is in what we call an alpha keratin state. As soon as you blow dry, manipulate, brush, comb, set, as soon as you do anything that changes the structure of the hair, basically what that is the hair is left in what they call a beta keratin state. As soon as the hair comes back into contact with moisture, the hair reverts back into alpha keratin state. So at the moment, think of the hair as being this big block of ice. I'm using my tools to manipulate and stretch the hair and mould the hair into position. And then I'm allowing the hair to cool down. In other words, visualizing it, I'm putting it back in the freezer to set. So as you heat the hair up, you manipulate the hair, you position it into position, and then you let it set. That's the key. How you leave it to cool down is how it's going to look. So try to always remember, as you're working, always make sure you're working super clean. Okay? Very important.
I've got a question from Natasha for you, John.
Okay, hi Natasha, where's Natasha from?
It doesn't say. Hi Johnny, I see that you use a lot of product. Does it not make the hair heavy and dull?
Good point, good point. It depends what products you use.
Okay.
It depends what products you use. If you use products that are quite salty or have a matte finish to them, then yeah, of course. But with my scenario, with, for example, the volume mousse, I'm using volume mousse because I want to set the hair and I want to set it away from the face. The BB mist is a brilliant cutting lotion and you don't get a build-up, you won't even feel it in the hair. And the hair assistant blow dry spray, it does leave a little bit of something in there to help you manipulate the hair. But to be honest, I don't know if you use any of Davines' products, but very rarely Davines' products feel like kind of glue or gluey or stunky. Usually they're very kind of soft on the hair. and they usually, as long as you blend them in correctly, you can usually use quite a lot. Can they hear me all right, Jonathan? If you want me to talk louder, guys, just let Jonathan know, and I can try and talk a bit louder for you. Jonathan, while I finish blow drying the hair, I'm going to finish blow drying this top section, okay? I'm going to continue wrap drying it, and I'm also going to start to elevate the hair with the brush a little bit, just to get a nice bounce so the hair goes away from the face. To give you a couple more tips of wrap drying, think about the hair in a very simple way. If the hair flicks this way, blow dry that way. If the hair flicks that way, blow dry this way. And keep blow drying, because in effect what you're doing is you're using the curvature of the head like a big roller. Just like, for example, if you were setting the hair in rollers, what you would do is you'd apply your lotion, your products, you'd roll the hair in the roller, you'd put the heat on the hair, you'd take the heat away, you'd let the roller cool down before you take the roller out, because if you take the roller out straight away, obviously we all know it collapses. So you would think about the head like one big roller, and what I'm doing is I'm wrapping the hair around the roller, constantly, applying my heat and then letting it cool down into position, okay? John, if you want to go through the sectioning thing with them, so, and if you go with John, John will go through that while I finish this top bit, okay?
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Which side do you want to go on? Are you good there? Hey guys. So yeah, as Johnny said earlier, at Allilon, we believe that sections don't create shape. Okay, Johnny went into the key factors, the over direction, the elevation and the cutting line earlier, and he spoke about they're the three things that help us to create the end result. So basically we came up with an idea that to kind of show or give an understanding of what kind of sections do. So you're not repeating the same section pattern on every single haircut that you do. We don't teach haircuts at Allilon. We give you the tools to be able to create any shape, start in any position. So when you're working in the salon, you don't have to start in exactly the same place and create the same vertical and horizontal shapes every single time. You can start at the front, you can start at the back, you can start on the top. Okay, so basically when Johnny spoke about vertical sections, a vertical section gives you greater control of your vertical shape. Now, the red arrow indicates how much your cutting line has on your vertical shape. So this is one section, and for talk's sake, we can say that this section is 2 centimeters thick. All right? So the red arrow indicates how much effect your cutting line has on your vertical shape. Now, when we cut hair, we're in control of all three shapes at the same time, your vertical, your horizontal and your diagonal. So this blue arrow gives an indication of how much your cutting line affects your horizontal section, your horizontal shape in one section, okay? Now, if your vertical shape, or your vertical section was 10 centimeters long, you would create 10 centimeters of the vertical shape. And we've already said that the horizontal, or the width of the section, was 2 centimeters, so you'd only control 2 centimeters of your horizontal shape. Now, in order to control the rest of your horizontal shape, what do you have to do? Well, obviously you have to put the next section, and the next section, and the next section, and the next section, systematically together. So you're still creating the same amount of vertical shape in each section, but your horizontal shape is now appearing due to the width of each section being put next to each other. Okay? So now if we flip the section pattern and we go to horizontal, again the horizontal section is 10 centimeters wide and 2 centimeters thick. Again, same principle. If our sections are horizontal, our cutting line is creating 10 centimeters of the horizontal shape and 2 centimeters of the vertical shape. So red arrow being the vertical shape, blue arrow being the horizontal shape. Again, in order to create the vertical shape, we have to then stack the sections on top of each other. Again, cutting line still creating 10 centimetres of the horizontal shape. But as we build the sections on top of each other, our vertical shape then starts to appear. Now, like what Johnny said, you can cut hair using vertical sections, you can cut hair using horizontal sections. It's up to you. The sections can change. They can go from vertical to diagonal to horizontal back to vertical, but you must understand why they're doing that in order to do it. And the whole purpose behind it is to understand what's in control. How much of your cutting line is affecting the vertical shape? How much is the cutting line affecting the horizontal shape? And now we'll move on to diagonal sections, because obviously diagonal sections are used a lot as well. So if you take a pure diagonal section, your cutting line will control the same amount of your vertical and horizontal shape. Now, we all know that there's different types of diagonal. If the section goes towards a diagonal vertical section, okay, then what's going to happen is it's going to affect your vertical shape more than it is your horizontal shape. Okay? Now, if the section goes more towards a diagonal horizontal, then again, it's going to have the opposite effect. You're going to affect more the horizontal shape than you are the vertical shape. Now, there's one thing that I haven't put in there, and that's the diagonal, because obviously we're talking about the threes. Now, if you go back to the vertical sections, our diagonal shape is created within each section. Now, we could have a diagonal shape that runs all the way through the sections. So your diagonal shape is really hard to understand and envision. Again, starting off with the horizontal, your diagonal shape would be inside the first section. It could also be here within the first section. Again, it could be within all of the sections being put together. So that's why a diagonal shape or a diagonal section is very difficult to understand. If we're working with diagonal sections, one pure diagonal, it would be here. And that would be your diagonal shape. But it also could be here. And that's why it's so difficult to understand. But if you can understand what's happening in one section, it becomes a lot easier then to put the haircut together like Johnny has systematically. So I hope that's gave you an insight into obviously what we teach here at Allilon. So we can go back over to Johnny.
Cool. Okay. So at the moment, I've basically dried the basic shape into position. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to work on all my neck hair and all my outlines, and then I'm going to cross-check all my internal shape, okay? So I'm going to give you a tip on how to get rid of neck hair in a safe way without obviously cutting the consumer. So the key is to stretch the muscle here. So here you have a muscle called the sternocleidomastoid. So the sternocleidomastoid, and then you have the trapezius muscle, which is the muscle that runs through the centre back. Now it's really important to understand all the muscles on the scalp. So for example, you have the frontalis, auricularis anterior, auricularis superior, auricularis posterior, sternocleidomastoid and trapezius. These are, and the occipitalis. These are the major muscles that you have along the head that you tend to work on when you're massaging and things like that. So at the moment I'm working on the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius. So what you do, different ways of doing it. The skin is obviously a lot more flexible here than it is in the centre. So what you do is you stretch the skin by doing this. You get your fingers and you basically pull the skin to the side like that, so you open it up, okay? And you go against the grain. And a good way of doing this is wherever your fingers are stretching it, keep your scissors there. In other words, there's no point your fingers being down here and you cutting up here because you've got no tension. So if you're going to cut here, put your blade as close as you can and really work away the excess. Really stretch that skin. And again here, look. go against the grain. So if the hair's going in one direction, you go in the opposite direction. Okay, and this is really, now you could use a clipper, or you could use a cutthroat razor. I think it's important to learn how to do it this way. And the reason for that is because if you're ever on stage and your battery runs out in your clipper, you're in trouble. So by learning this way, it enables you to be able to, it's easy to get a clipper and quickly do that, but to do it this way, you get a much better finish on the hair. Also, another way of thinking about it is this. When you cut things like neck hair with the scissor, if you look, let's just imagine I cut a piece of hair with the scissor, and you look under that hair with the microscope, the top of that hair will be cut on a diagonal. Whereas if you look at that top of that hair with a clipper, the top is cut in like a square, which is why when you feel something that's been cut with clippers, it feels more aggressive on the finger. It's because the tip of the hair is cut into a square rather than on a diagonal with a scissor. That's why it's softer. That's why it grows out a bit softer. And women don't tend to like the neck hair feeling so aggressive.
What about men?
Men don't mind it. I think guys like that feeling of kind of roughness to where their hair feels. So stretch the skin. Now, to be fair, if I stretch the skin like this and I'm cutting like this, I can look at you and I know that I know that there's no way I'm gonna possibly cut her because of the fact that the skin's just too tight. Yeah. But if I'm moving my hand away, then it's much more risky working on it. So don't be scared to actually really put the tension in on the skin. Yeah, tilt the head down, and that way you go much shorter, much tighter, because the skin is a lot more stretched. Have you got any more questions, Sean?
I'm just looking through now, as yet. No.
Okay. So, one of the things that I'd like to talk to you guys about tonight is all of our social media. One of the things that we're very lucky to do is we're very lucky to travel the world. And we're very lucky to do classes and shows and all these different really creative stuff. And if you want to keep in touch and if you want to keep an eye on all of the stuff we do, I'll get Jonathan to write on the board all of our hashtags and all of our Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. And if you want to keep an eye on what we're doing and how we're doing it, then all you've got to do is go onto obviously our Facebook page and our Instagram page and follow everything we do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through my technique, checking my technique, making sure it's super clean. So the basic haircut is here now. All of the refining, all of the kind of the shaping of the haircut is there. The main shape is here. I just need to now start to just double check and refine all the detail work, okay? Making sure it's super clean. So what I'm going to do, if you come over here, Ant, I'm going to go through my haircut section by section, just making sure that it's super clean. I don't need clips because I'm going to work disciplined. I just need to basically secure the hair with my hand, get my comb underneath, pull the hair out, and just make sure my technique is super clean.
John, are we going to Cyprus this year?
I'm going to Cyprus probably on holiday, but as a company, no, we're not. We're going to Greece a few times. We're going to Greece twice. We're going to South Africa quite a few times. We're going to be going to Canada quite a few times. The Philippines, Lithuania, Poland. Where else? Vietnam, New Zealand. We're doing Chile. We're doing quite a lot this year. So, if, for example, you're interested in joining any of our shows or our seminars or any of our classes, if you do like our Facebook pages, you'll always see updates on where we're going to be, what we're going to do, and we can help you. If you email us or info@Allilon Education, if you email us the country that you're living in, we can put you in touch with one of the local distributors who we're working with or the Davos network that we have there, and we'll be able to get you some tickets for stuff.
We've got asking about if we're coming to Australia.
At the moment, there isn't any plans, if I'm honest, to come to Australia. But it depends what you want. Let me give you an example. A lot of our education gets done in different ways. Let's say you own a salon and you are in, I don't know, pick a country. Let's just say you're in Germany, okay? And you have 5 team members that you work with or work in your salon. To fly all 6 of you, to London to have education with Allilon, hotels, accommodation, food, flights, blah, blah, plus the course cost, it tends to be quite expensive. So what a lot of people tend to do is they tend to fly us to you. So that could be definitely an option. And what would happen is that way, all you're doing basically is paying for flight and accommodation for one person and food for one person, and obviously our day rates. But all this information, I don't really want to talk about, I'm not trying to sell courses here. So if you want to know more about our courses, more about our shows, more about our seminars, just email us at info@Allilon Education, and we can deal with you more on, in regards to the business side of it. But right now, I just want to focus on the technique and the little tips that I can give you.
So Jean's asking another question. She said, is there more room for error in diagonal sections?
Okay, the truth is this. A lot of the times when people work with diagonal sections, they usually lose control over 2 things. They usually lose control over their elevation or their over direction because they're so busy focused on the sectioning pattern and the effect. For example, everyone's being taught that diagonal sections will encourage you to push weight forward or push weight backwards. And it's true, it does encourage you to push weight, but it's all to do with the angle of the cutting line rather than the fact that the section is diagonal. So my advice to people is start to think a bit less about whether it's graduated or layered, and start to think more about the factors that play a part in creating the shape. Okay? I'm going to move my body around. I'm going to start to check my entire shape now. By the time I get to the other side, I should be done. And then what I'll do is I'll draw it for you. How long have we been? I'm trying to make sure that we stick to a timeline tonight.
It's now 18 minutes past 8.
Brilliant. Okay, good. So in I'll say 5 minutes I'll be finished my basic shape. And then I'll start to draw it for you.
Any tips on cross-checking, John?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I would say to you is do not cross-cut, cross-check. Now the difference is when you're cross-checking is you're just checking to see if the initial shape that you're putting in was correct. If you have to cross-cut, you're actually going to be making holes within your shape, because I'm basically checking now by taking horizontal sections. I'm checking that the shape that I put in diagonally was balanced and symmetrical. If I check horizontally and I can see my fingers or an angle, which means I'm going to be heavier or longer on this side, then I don't just cut it, which is one of the big mistakes people make. You go back through the same way you cut it and make sure it's super clean. And every time I'm cross-checking, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm using the wide end of my comb, and the reason for that is because I'm trying to avoid using too much tension on my shape, okay?
In regards to elevation and over direction when you're cross-checking, John, what do you have to be mindful of?
It's a good question. Hair cutting has mechanical systems, and it has a step-by-step approach. So in today's haircut, obviously, what I wanted you to focus on was the cutting by numbers. That's a big thing. Understanding that if you want symmetry, then you need to work symmetrical. So if you take 5 sections on one side, you should be taking 5 sections on the other side. You don't take 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. But even though, taking clean sections, counting your sections, keeping the hair evenly damp, all these things that we talk about, which is related to controlling your shape, they're all relevant, but in the end of the day, you also have to cut with a sense of feeling. When it comes to cross-checking my shape, I need to visualize my triangular shape this way. So I know that section 1 has to come to here. section 2 to here, section 3, section 4. So I'm envisioning my elevation. I'm feeling it. I'm not just thinking about the number system, I'm actually feeling the elevation. A lot of hairdressers, they tend to feel the haircut, but not necessarily do things like counting and stuff. And it's just trying to get a balance between the two, really. You can see here, there was something not so clean in my technique. And the reason for that is because of the mastoid process area. So the mastoid process is the bones that sit behind the ear here. Basically, this side's more predominant. So I have to be a bit more sensitive to that and really check that side.
We've got wonderful hands, lovely cut. Thanks from Florence.
Oh,
That's by
that's sweet.
Katerina.
Thank you, Katerina.
And could you read? We've got a question. Hi guys. What is your internal shape?
Good point. Okay, so my internal shape is triangular this way, triangular vertically, and round horizontally. Okay, so often we talk about thinking about expanded shape. So expanded shape is basically the shape that is visible when all the hair is standing straight out from the base. Okay, so if you can visualize that shape, then you know where your fingers should be or how much you should be elevating when checking the shape. Now look at this, can you see that? That looks unclean, doesn't it? Yeah? See that? Now look carefully. Look at the skin. Look at the flexibility of the skin. Now if I just loosen the tension, watch this. If I loosen the tension and not use as much tension, all of a sudden my line's clean. So what would happen normally is you'd cut that off and forget the skin, and then after you'd have a big hole in it where your graduation wouldn't sit right. So don't always really think about things like the skin, because the skin is really important in managing how clean your shape becomes. Good. Now I know a lot of people who are tuning in from somewhere like the States or that kind of region. Right now you're probably all at work, so I know I was speaking to a few friends on Facebook. They're kind of trying to log in and out during customers. You will be able to view this video. It's going to be left online. I'll put it on my personal one for those people who are my Facebook friends, and it'll be on the Allilon page for a while, and we'll keep building them every week. So next week I might do a gent, or I might do afro hair, or I might do something slightly more kind of maybe something creative on a live person, or maybe something very, very classic on a mannequin. I want to show you guys a massive variation of work, and throughout the year you're going to see a big catalogue of different things being done, and you will also see the work of the team. One of the things that I want to focus on as well is really giving you guys an insight into the training systems that we use at Allilon, because the internal training system that we use for our staff, we're quite passionate about. And for those of you who are salon owners, tuning into that one will help you be able to put systems in place to be able to train your staff efficiently and manage them from a distance, as well as being able to understand how your educators are doing in regards to your staff. Okay, coming up to the last couple of sections. And again, I'm just checking my shape, constantly checking it, making sure it's flowing nicely. And what I'm going to do after is I'm just going to gently point into this top section here, just so that I take that little bit of weight out of that corner, so the hair really moves away from the face nicely.
I noticed, John, that you haven't really played around too much with your chair. Did you speak about that at the beginning, or?
As in manoeuvring the chair around?
The height of the chair, yeah.
No, I haven't really spoken about too much about that. I can do that, but now, guys, I'm just going to show you something. If you come out here, and basically, obviously, I've worked horizontal sections. So, when it comes to checking your shape, check it vertically to check your elevation, to make sure your elevation is accurate. Yeah, and everywhere you pick the hair up, you should be clean. Yeah, so you should be able to pick up a section. I'm going to pick up a section maybe 2 or 3 centimeters across. So I'm going to pick it up vertically because I've cut it horizontally, haven't I? And diagonally. So I'm going to now check it vertically. Take the section.
Drum roll.
Yeah. And then just comb the hair out. And you should have a clean shape.
Some fingers again.
Yeah. You should have a clean shape. Yeah? Every time. And every time you pick the hair up, everywhere you pick it up, you use your comb rather than your fingers. Use your comb, pull the hair up with the comb, and you're looking for straight lines. Yeah? And every time you pick the hair up, what you're looking for is a straight line. Every time you do it, whether you're picking up horizontally, vertically, or diagonally.
I think you've just answered the question. You said you are going to point cut.
Yeah, I'm just going to gently point into this top hair. Not too much, because I want the haircut to be as pure as possible. So I'm just going to gently...
Why the top, John, and not anywhere else?
Okay, obviously I've actually rounded the corner off on the top. It's slightly layered the top. But because the hair is quite dense, even though I've layered it through, by taking away a little bit of the excess weight from the cutting line, so I'm not actually changing the length. If you look carefully, if I come this way, you will see, let me do it this way so Andy can see. So you can see my graduation that works up, and then obviously where my layering kicks in on the top. Okay, and all I want to do is I don't want to disturb the graduation. I'm just going to gently just point into the tips of the layer. So I'm not pointing into any of the graduation. And the reason for that is because graduation is supposed to be a really fluid build-up of weight. And as soon as you start pointing into it and softening it, in effect what you're doing is losing the principle of building that weight. Whereas layering, you could afford to soften it a bit more. And I'm not going too deep, I'm just basically softening the cutting lines. That must be a really good angle with my chins, that must be. Or 5 with my chins. Okay.
Do you want to get your chins there?
Cheers, mate.
Chin up.
Chin up. Okay. So these are the last little small details. And I'm done. And then what I'll do is I'll style the hair once I've checked my outlines. So I'm just going to check the outlines once, calm the hair down into the natural form, and with the exterior shape, just gently soften the tip.
No music this week, John?
No, I watched last week's video, and I didn't like the fact that I was kind of fighting the stereo to try and communicate, and when people were asking me questions, it was hard for them to hear my answers.
Beautiful, right?
Thanks, buddy. So a really good way of checking your technique, let me show you. If you look in the mirror, and when you pull your hair up like this, can you see the line underneath? If that line is clean, your technique is clean. Yeah? The only thing you have to think about when you do this is that if the head shape is uneven, areas will collapse sooner than others. So if you see now, look, can you see how the line changes? It's basically because in here there's an indentation. So now the hair has further to travel in the comb, so hair around it is falling out sooner. So another good thing to do is to use what we call the shine line, okay? Now if you look carefully, let me show you what the shine line is. Right? If you look at the light that hits the hair, let me try and zoom out so you get to see better. Okay. If you come behind me, Ant, so you can film over my shoulder. Okay, and come behind me, you can see better. Look in the mirror. Can you see this line here? This is what you call a shine line. Can you see it moving up and down? Now, by looking at the shine line, you're able to see the mechanics in the shape. The shine line should stay solid the whole time. It's a bit more difficult here because our light, I don't know if you can see, is more on this side. So literally this side's got more of a light than this side. But if you tilt towards the mirror, towards the light, sorry, you'll be able to see it better. So as you tilt the head up and down, you can see the shine line move. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to style the hair through. So I'm going to use a ceramic vest brush. I'm going to use a tiny bit of oil, not too much. I'm going to run that product through the hair quite evenly. And I'm going to use a little bit of hairspray. Again, this is the Your Hair Assistant hairspray by Angelo Seminara in association with Davinas. Now I'm just going to place the hair into position so you can really see the fluidity of that graduation. I wanted to show you guys quite a classic kind of feeling, something you could really do in the salon tomorrow, but it is slightly modern because of the parting and because of the outlines in the back. Okay. Good. Okay, let me show you what I did. Follow me. Could you be here for me? Yep. Okay, come in and let's just show how we cut this. Okay. Okay, so we had a side parting. Okay, then, sorry, it's a bit wet. Okay, we went from the crown down to the centre back. We took a vertical section first, like that, and we cut a graduated cutting line there. Then we took parallel, that's wet. There you go. We took parallel diagonal sections. And we worked all the way up the head. Like this. Then, obviously we have our diagonal sections coming through. Ciao guys. Bye. Thank you. Parting, and then we took diagonal sections which were slightly curved and we worked back into our shape like this. We cut the exterior shape. And then we comb the hair down to the natural fall for the first 3 sections. And then we basically graduated all the rest. On the other side, so this is obviously our round graduation from the side. Now this is a really, really, really important part of the process, documenting your work properly, and it's something which we feel quite strongly about as a company, because if you can draw your haircut on a two-dimensional shape, then you can really understand what it is that you're doing. I'm doing this quite roughly, so I do apologise. I'm doing it quite quickly. So I'm sorry if it looks messy. Let's tidy up this line because it was wet before. Natural fall. Oh, love it when that happens. Wrong colour. That should be green. Okay. Now, this information for me is actually the core value, because you should be able to, by looking back at this video, you'll be able to really follow the shape really well. And I'm coming down to this last drawing here. My sections came from the front to the back, like this. And all the hair was pulled down. In fact, to be fair, on the top it was slightly pulled down a bit more. Like that. So if I want to show you now my expanded shape, like I said, my horizontal shape was round. And on this side, where it was slightly heavy, I kept an element of extra length in that front area. But the overall shape was round. Whereas this side, as you can see vertically, it was graduated here. So it was triangular vertically and round horizontally. This hair went over there. So the sections came around like this. From the front to the back. And all the hair was pulled across. Outline in the back was like this. Okay. So, just before I finish off, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me before I finish? If I quickly run through what I did one last time. I think she looks gorgeous. Look at that. It's easy when you've got a good model to work on, to be fair. Nice hair. Okay, so my basic shape was working from the back initially. First section was vertical with a graduated cutting line. Then I worked diagonal sections, 7 sections to the top, both sides. Then on my left side, I worked section 1, 2 and section 3 on a natural fall, no elevation. And then the remaining sections were basically elevated to create some really beautiful graduation that flows through to the back. And on the other side, the same principle. Section 1, 2 and 3 were down to the natural fall. And then the rest was elevated. And then what I did as I got up further up the head, I just elevated the hair a little bit more, just to really have that little bit of a weight line gone through the top. And I think this is something that you can definitely very, very easily do in the salon. Don't forget the idea of the dot to dot in regards to managing the outline. Yeah, so you cut one side, then you measure it with your fingers. You can also use your comb to measure it from side to side. So start on one bit, rotate your comb to the other side, get the same angle. And to be fair, key points to remember: count your sections, try to use the room to manage your symmetry, try to manage the chair and the shoulders to manage your symmetry. Think about the feeling of elevation. Don't just focus on the numbers, because that's a system. Also focus on the feeling of your hand and the control of your elevation, and visualize your shape. Understand that your vertical shape is triangular and your horizontal shape is round. I just want to say thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this haircut. I've really enjoyed doing this one actually. So thank you, Sophia, for letting me cut your hair. Do we have any questions, Johnny? Any last minute questions?
No, just lots and lots of feedback.
Thank you, guys.
Saying amazing, Johnny.
Glad I liked it.
Massive thank you. Your knowledge and talent and dedication to education is inspiring. See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday. I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Ask questions. We can still answer them for you. Okay. Thank you.